Hey, Chibis, I'm Aiwe, and today we are talking about Meta's empire and the trillion-dollar gap beneath it. If you enjoy stories like this, hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's go. Act 1. The revenue engine and the asymmetry. Imagine a single factory that produces nearly all of one company's income. It runs around the clock, but the highest grade ore is arriving from farther away while the local workforce quietly shrinks. That factory is Meta's advertising business, and the question serious analysts are asking is not whether the lights are on today, but whether the foundation can handle what management has already promised to build. In this video, we will map the gap between the cash engine and the commitments, because that gap is the key to understanding the stock. 98% of Meta's revenue comes from advertising. The last time the company disclosed regional numbers, a North American user was worth roughly 5 times the global average. Since then, growth in those high-value markets has stalled or reversed, while nearly all new account growth is concentrated in regions that generate far less revenue per user. This matters because the infrastructure Meta is building is global, but the cash that pays for it is overwhelmingly North American and European. TikTok has passed Facebook in total daily minutes spent by American users, despite having roughly half as many domestic accounts. Pew data shows the share of American teenagers on Facebook fell from over 70% a decade ago to 31% today. Court records from recent litigation indicate only 17% of time on Facebook and 7% of time on Instagram involves content from actual personal relationships. The rest is recommended material and brands. Personal networks create a stickiness advertisers pay a premium to reach. If users are not staying for their friends, pricing power erodes. When Apple introduced app tracking transparency, Meta internally estimated the change would cost roughly $10 billion in a single year. The business recovered, but the episode revealed how sensitive the model is to external shocks. The European Union is now pressing rules around algorithmic targeting and young users. Each regulatory push is a reminder that the ad engine is not entirely under Meta's control. Act 2. The invisible commitments. While the top line still looks massive, the balance sheet is absorbing obligations that do not always appear in the quarterly headline. Meta's own filings disclose commitments in the hundreds of billions of dollars for data center leases that have been signed but not yet commenced. There are additional reported purchase commitments for servers and cloud capacity that bring the total future obligation to a comparable scale. These are not vague intentions. They are signed contracts that will convert to cash outflows. Some of the largest data center projects are technically owned by joint ventures in which Meta holds a minority stake. The bonds that finance them are issued by special purpose vehicles, keeping the debt off Meta's direct balance sheet. This is standard practice, but it means the company's true economic exposure is larger than a casual reading of net debt suggests. A finance analyst must reconstruct the full capital stack, not just a line item labeled corporate liabilities. In the most recent quarter referenced, free cash flow came in at $700 million, down 91% year over year. Some projections suggest that if current operating and capital expenditure trajectories continue, Meta could move into net debt territory by 2027. That is not a prophecy of bankruptcy. It is a statement that the cash engine may be sending more of its output toward future infrastructure than toward present flexibility. The buffer is thinning even as the obligations grow. Act 3. The strategic detour. Over the past decade, Meta has redirected capital toward bets that did not become second pillars. In 2019, the company pursued a stablecoin project known as Libra, later Diem, before regulatory pressure stalled it. The remains were reportedly sold for roughly $182 million to an acquiring institution that later failed. After that, Meta directed tens of billions into Reality Labs, its metaverse division. Cumulative operating losses there total roughly $88 billion since 2020, with recent quarters showing more than $4 billion in losses on less than $500 million in revenue. Reality Labs has been functionally deprioritized in favor of artificial intelligence, but the competitive position is contested. When Meta's Llama 4 reached public benchmarks, The version submitted to leaderboards was reportedly a specially tuned variant, and the production model placed 32nd. A separate closed frontier model has been delayed after internal testing placed it behind Google's latest releases. Reports suggest Meta discussed licensing Google's Gemini for products in the interim, though those discussions are not independently confirmed. United States government approval of Llama for federal use is a genuine positive, yet procurement is a slow burn, not a quarterly revenue spike. Unlike Microsoft, Amazon, or Google, Meta does not currently operate a major cloud leasing business. It has reportedly explored selling some excess capacity, which would help de-risk the build-out, but advertising still makes up about 98% of revenue. Without a clear commercial channel to monetize artificial intelligence at scale, the spending looks more like a cost center than a bridge to a new business line. Act 4. The legal stack and the trust ledger. Against this backdrop, legal exposure functions less like a sudden earthquake and more like a slow rising tide. A Los Angeles case produced a $2.1 million verdict against Meta for mental health damages to a single plaintiff. While small in isolation, that outcome is noted as a precedent for a consolidated docket of more than 3,000 similar cases in federal court, with thousands more coordinated in California. The next round of trials is scheduled for October 2025, according to available court information. Meta has already booked $2.4 billion in legal charges in a single quarter. A multi-state lawsuit has sought damages up to $1.4 trillion. The overseeing judge reportedly characterized that figure as unreasonable, and state lawyers are said to have conceded that something closer to $200 billion is more realistic. These figures should be treated as reported rather than finalized. Separately, Meta settled a multi-state matter for roughly $17 billion shortly before the period in question, and the stock reportedly rose on the news, implying investors had feared a worse outcome. Even so, the direction of travel points toward higher structural legal costs. There is also internal pressure on the advertising model. Last November, Reuters reported on internal documents projecting that roughly 10% of 2024 revenue, or about $16 billion, came from ads for scams and banned goods. Those documents reportedly estimated users were shown roughly 15 billion higher-risk scam ads per day. Internal policy was described as banning advertisers only when systems were 95% confident of fraud. Below that threshold, advertisers were charged higher rates rather than removed. If accurate, that creates tension between near-term revenue extraction and long-term advertiser trust. Act 5. The convergence. Taken together, these threads point to a single structural question. Meta remains cash flow positive. Its network effects across Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp are historically durable. The advertising business recovered after the Apple tracking change. That resilience is real. But resilience in one quadrant does not eliminate vulnerability in another. The off-balance sheet infrastructure commitments, the compounding legal exposures, and the maturation of the core advertising base are not three separate risks. They are the same risk in different costumes, each consuming the buffer that the ad business would otherwise provide. Artificial intelligence is unlikely to become a second revenue pillar fast enough to change the arithmetic, especially when 98% of revenue still comes from ads, and the frontier is crowded with better capitalized rivals. A 2018 email from Mark Zuckerberg that surfaced during antitrust proceedings acknowledged a non-trivial chance that Meta would be forced to spin out Instagram within a decade. Historical comparators like MySpace, which went from a $580 million acquisition to a $35 million sale in 6 years, remind us that network effects can reverse faster than balance sheets adjust. The question is not whether Meta disappears overnight. It is what the company looks like in 2030 without a genuine second pillar, and whether commitments already in motion allow room to maneuver if the core engine weakens. If you are evaluating this company, do not watch only the quarterly earnings release. Watch the filing footnotes, the court dockets, and the regional user data the company has stopped disclosing. The story is in the gap between what the engine earns and what management has already promised to spend. Subscribe for the next structural breakdown.